Sozin's Comet, the 4-part finale of The Last Airbender. A true finale, as it is the culmination of everything the series has built up to this point. Character arcs are about to end, and the main conflict is reaching its climax. Prior to the ultimate finale of The Last Airbender, Avatar Aang has a dilemma. He has the task of battling main antagonist Fire Lord Ozai and stopping his plans of world domination. But how he does it is what causes him to stop and reflect. He's conflicted because while the most obvious possibility is to just outright kill him, Aang is not that person to do that. So, sitting in silence and quiet, he contacts the avatars of previous ages, asking for wisdom. Avatar Roku tells him to be decisive, as it was his own lack of decisiveness that led to Sozin starting a war. Avatar Kyoshi tells him that only justice will bring peace. Avatar Kuruk shared the wisdom of diligence, always actively shaping personal destiny as the Avatar, and the destiny of the world at large. But their answers prove unsatisfactory and inconclusive. After a bit of back and forth with Momo, he reaches out to Avatar Yang Chen, an air nomad avatar. She had this to say.
Many great and wise air nomads have detached themselves and achieved spiritual enlightenment. But the Avatar can never do it, because your sole duty is to the world. Here is my wisdom for you. Selfless duty calls you to sacrifice your own spiritual needs and do whatever it takes to protect the world.
Needless to say, Aang was left with no solid conclusions. This is where Aang's most crucial character conflict reaches its most intense point. It's not about killing the bad guy, it's not about being strong enough, it's about balance. A few times before the final book, Aang has unleashed his avatar state to mixed results. His near-death experience in the ocean was a critical moment which he survived, showing that he had the willpower in him to overpower such a dire situation. But he's also nearly died by Azula's lightning bending many episodes later. And a couple of times, his emotions got the better of him and turned his greatest power into widespread collateral damage. For Aang, all of the training and other elements helped him to become more powerful, but his true culmination of power in the Avatar state was still volatile, regardless of his willpower and his emotions. He had great expectations ahead of him. All the world was prepared to take the fight to the Fire Nation. As the Avatar, he's expected to stop the Fire Lord, but in terms of how well he can fight Ozai, well, that's where Sozin's Comet comes in. Though he's actually quite old due to his time spent in stasis at the beginning of the series, Aang still has the maturity and experience of a kid. I often forget it, but The Last Airbender takes place over the course of a season. For Aang to have the best chance of defeating Ozai, he's in a race against time to master all the other elements and grow stronger before Ozai can gain access to the power increase that comes from Sozin's Comet, a phenomenon caused by Fire Lord Sozin that gave his armies more firepower, no pun intended, in the war against the nations. If we're talking about balance, this very act has disrupted it, and may yet again create more chaos if Aang does not stop Ozai. If that is not a lot of pressure for a kid, I don't know what is, especially as an airbender of his nature. He's a pacifist and deeply values life, wanting to never go out of his way to take one as a means of conflict resolution. His spirituality is a strength, as it has allowed him to learn from some of the best teachers, while never compromising his morality and spiritual values. But in the face of severe circumstances, it's his self-control at his most powerful that has not found balance. His experiences have been at the extremes of overwhelming violence or complete reluctance to embrace his full power as a result of intentionally holding back, likely in fear of completely compromising what he holds dear to him. His mastery of the elements had a long way to go, and unfortunately for Aang, he did not have the luxury of time on his side. Roku even advised that mastering all of the elements would require years of time. Aang only had a season, a summer. And since the Avatar state is a self-defense mechanism, it was more than likely to be triggered against someone as powerful as an Ozai under Sozin's Comet. It's been triggered in response to strong emotions, immediate danger, and with the help of other avatars, usually as a reaction to the other two. And if he dies in the Avatar state, there are no more avatars, period. Being a pacifist and taking the diplomatic route against a warmonger who also would like nothing more than your utter destruction, that's a bad combination. All of these prerequisites would be triggered. And what would that mean for Avatar Aang? Throughout the series, it's been established that the Avatar is to maintain balance across the world, and the world is shaped around the elements. Those elements depend on someone to be able to channel their nature and their power. Since each element is associated with different ways of thinking and doing, along with people that live by those ways, the Avatar is essentially tasked with keeping all of these incredibly different ideologies from overlapping and causing conflict with one another. And through it all, the Avatar has the unspoken duty to not self-destruct morally and inadvertently use their demigod powers for any cause less than the pursuit of balance. It could even be said that because of the legendary Avatar lineage, the Avatar represents the pinnacle of world balance, combining the best of each element and their respective ideologies and unique traits. In this war against the Fire Nation, it also comes down to Aang to defeat the Fire Lord himself. Any other person that could defeat the Fire Lord would simply author another chapter of violence in a time period of chaos and destruction.
If I did defeat Ozai, and I don't know that I could, it would be the wrong way to end the war. History would see it as just more senseless violence, a brother killing a brother to grab power. The only way for this war to end peacefully is for the Avatar to defeat the Fire Lord.
It comes down to the Avatar to accomplish what others cannot, restoring the peace of the world. Aang understands this. When the Moon Spirit was threatened, he warned Zhao, who was in possession of it, of the consequences of a world without the moon, a world out of balance. Regardless of what Zhao felt concerning the matter, without balance, even the Fire Nation he served would suffer from the imbalance as a result of his personal motives. So what's to say that Aang couldn't cause suffering because of his own actions? At the height of his full might, what kind of damage could he cause? He fears these kinds of consequences because it has never been in him to cause such problems. When his full power is unleashed and he cannot control it, what's to say that the balance that he fights for as the Avatar won't be tilted on its head? For Aang, the identity of being the Avatar is overwhelming. Remember, he's really only 11, even with his time in stasis. While someone like Korra has embraced the Avatar identity and all of its powers long before she even began her journey, for Aang, being the Avatar at the most demanding moments has almost never reached a good conclusion for him. He has used his Avatar state to defeat a Fire Nation fleet and save his friends from a storm, but Aang has never had to use the Avatar state as a combat-based conflict resolution against someone potentially just as powerful as him. Apart from that, he's either nearly died or nearly destroyed everything around him, and with Sozin's Comet incoming, this is his journey's end. A final battle with final choices to be made. So it can be discouraging when past avatars conclude that what has to be done must be done, and after practicing what was basically an assassination attempt on the Fire Lord, that's not exactly the most enlightening nor the most encouraging answer to a very difficult question. But it's not because he cannot do it. What Aang was asking for was not a way out, but a way of fulfilling his destiny as the Avatar, without compromising the ideals he was raised with, the same ideals that a peacekeeping Avatar like Aang would naturally have. Personally, I somewhat disagree with Yang Chen's words in this episode. I believe it's entirely possible to live out your role and your life without sacrificing completely any personal values, especially high moral and spiritual values that have become part of your identity. Nonetheless, the Avatars all have valid perspectives shaped by loss, sacrifice, and the greater good. And though I have some disagreements, that's not to say that the Avatar's responses were incorrect. I believe it's what kept Aang constantly thinking and searching for a way to fulfill the burden of defeating the Fire Lord without stooping below his morality. He had to be decisive, be just, be diligent, and be honorable as the Avatar, in his own fundamentally correct way. And though Aang may not have agreed with the Avatar's responses, it's not to say that they were incorrect. Aang didn't give up, and his willingness to keep learning and ability to problem solve is what led to his fateful encounter with the Lion Turtle. This isn't the first time that Aang has questioned his Avatar destiny as well. Being ostracized from his own people and never gotten a chance at even a regular childhood is hard for someone as young as him. Given the weight of his destiny and the incredible power that he wields, it's easy to understand why Aang would be continuously hesitant about being the Avatar. Not just being the Avatar, but having all of the responsibilities and burdens of such a lineage. Within the spirit's world, Avatar Yang Chen taught him that being the Avatar comes with the opportunity of mortality, experiencing all of life's troubles and toils to grow a nature of empathy and compassion. So, she has merits to her words. She is essentially answering a question meant to address a cataclysmic problem. Aang has a duty to the world as the Avatar, but he also has a duty to himself to not stoop to the same degrees of imperfection that the world is filled with, and eventually, he does find a way to stop Ozai without destroying his personal values. Once he learned energy bending, it came down to his willpower to seal the deal and ultimately put an end to the Fire Lord's ambitions. This might have been the peak of his conflict. Had he lost himself in the process of energy bending, the results would have been a tragic victory. Thankfully though, that's not how the battle ended. Aang stood in the aftermath of everything he fought for after such a difficult journey. The balance has been restored, and for Aang, self-control and self-mastery over his most difficult power was achieved. But most importantly, balance was achieved. He could rest easy knowing that he had fulfilled his duty as the Avatar without becoming something that he would not want to be. He was Avatar Aang, who saved the world in his own way. Our own moon affects our own Earth. Its gravitational pull affects the ocean tides, reflects light during nighttime, and causes the nocturnal nature of certain animals to stir, among many other things. The moon has a role, and it is to maintain a balance. What is balance? Is it finding a 50-50 split? A compromise that benefits all parties without subtracting from their totals? Is it spacing out time across schedules to meet our own personal needs and obligations to the world around us? Is it karma? What goes around comes around. Across fiction, there has always been a force that stands for balance. Across our own world, balance has been taught as a way to enlightenment and to living a better life. For Avatar, with all of its inspirations and themes, balance is about temperance. Having such great power at the palm of your fingertips can be intoxicating. It takes the right mind and the right heart to properly contain the scale at which these powers can impede and affect the world in unimaginable ways. But it also takes persistence in becoming the force of balance that the Avatar is to be. To be someone who is decisive, just, diligent, honorable, and, as Aang has shown, considerate of all life. This is the great equalizer to incredible powers being in the possession of people filled with potential. With great power and potential comes all the troubles and questions of mortality. Potential, like white and black, yin and yang, can be incredibly terrific or terrifyingly incredible. For Aang, balance was about finding the equal measure in which he can channel his full power without losing himself entirely in the terrible destruction that he can cause, in turn compromising what he stands for, regardless of whatever the situation might be and what resolutions have to be reached. Balance in this sense is about putting conflicts that threaten the established balance to rest, while placing the world in a new position from which they can move forward. Essentially, becoming better after trying times. This might sound familiar to other stories. In plot diagrams, this is known as the resolution. But for a more individual application, this fits in the outline of the hero's journey, specifically the end. Aang has become master of two worlds. As his own person, he's found balance in his ability to temper his powers and act upon his personal values. As the Avatar, he saved the world he lives in. There is a balance to all things. Or rather, there are opposites to all things. Where there is life, there is death. Where there is good, there is evil. In this, their respective principles and universal influence and power is defined and made clear. Similar to how Avatar Yang Chen explained the purpose of the Avatar's mortal existence, which is to grow and develop their own natures and their personal relationships with the world they inhabit and the people they live with. Personal balance is a question meant to be answered and asked again constantly, but I believe it starts with temperance. self-control, and self-restraint in the face of difficult circumstances. What temperance doesn't mean is doing nothing, but it does mean being our best selves without overdoing it. There is such a thing as overdoing it, especially when it comes to the values we hold close to us and the relationships we've established with others and ourselves, and especially when we have considerable power. Without temperance and moderation, passion can become zealotry, persistence and diligence can become an obsession, love can become lust, pleasure can become pain, absolute power can corrupt absolutely. Even good attitudes, good ways of problem solving, and character building can become detrimental if they're left untempered. Being tireless can become tiresome. Being mindful can become paranoia. These are the instances where anybody can have their Ask the Avatars moments. A time to self-reflect and to find new resolve in pursuing new resolutions as a way of achieving their goals. We simply should never want to place ourselves in a position where the extreme is the prime example. As a wise old king once said, "And see that all these things are done in wisdom and order, for it is not requisite that a man should run faster than he has strength. And again, it is expedient that he should be diligent, that thereby he might win the prize. Therefore, all things must be done in order." Aang certainly put these words to the test and came out successful. He did not pursue his balance in a linear fashion, but searched for a way to accommodate his values into his ultimate destiny. Where one door closed, he found another that he could choose to open. For Avatar Aang, all of these things surely could have proven to be his own downfall. Perhaps not in a physical sense, but in a moral and spiritual sense. With the loss of his values, who knows what kind of avatar he would have been. But with Sozin's Comet, we don't need to wonder what kind of avatar he was. He is the force of balance. He is Aang, the Last Airbender. He is Aang, the Avatar. For how long ago this show aired and for the kind of audience it was catered to, The Last Airbender does something that seldom happens through a fictional world, and that is communicating relevant principles about life in a very simple way. It might come off as stereotypical in its execution, but that doesn't take away from what it's showing and telling. This formula has led to some of the most nostalgic moments in our childhood memories, and some of the most realistic characterizations across the broad spectrum of fiction. We might not be the Avatar, but we can all learn from Aang and his friend's journey to save the world.